The Toronto Maple Leafs have fired Sheldon Keefe as the head coach of the hockey club. We're joined by the TV voice, one of the voices of the New York Rangers on MSG Network, Joe Micheletti. Joe, your thoughts about Sheldon Keefe, who you knew and have been around a few times, being fired as the Maple Leafs coach?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, I have I have so much respect for these coaches and what they do and the amount of pressure that they're under. And I'm glad they get paid well for what they have to do. And I like Sheldon, and he was always accommodating to me when the Rangers would play the Leafs. And I always appreciated that about him. But, with all the coaches, the numbers of coaches that have gotten fired in the last year and a half, and with the expectations in Toronto and trying to make that get to the next step, it doesn't surprise me. I thought that Toronto looked like a little different team this year. They had more grind to their game, but they didn't score enough, and that's I'm not sure that's always on the coach, but more so on some of the players. But it doesn't surprise me that they've made the move.
Yep. Well, he certainly had a lengthy run by NHL standards. He was the 5th longest serving coach in the NHL before he got fired.
Yeah.
And you can't say that it was instantaneous decision that was made. And I think you would agree, we will probably see 10 new head coaches next year. That's kind of the average of where we're going right now. One out of every 3 guys is going to get fired every year. And that's a staggering number, isn't it?
It really is. And I don't agree with that because you see, a lot of these coaches just end up going someplace else and doing a good job. They're good coaches, sure. But that old saying, Bob, about it's easier to fire the coach than it is to make trades. It certainly holds true with the salary cap and the types of contracts that these players have now. In so many cases, they're almost unmovable. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I was thinking about this the other day too. To think that Marty St. Louis, who is still learning to be a head coach in the league, and I think he's done a good job in Montreal with that young group, is now one of the longest tenured coaches in the league, is pretty staggering, isn't it?
Yep, crazy. He was 6th. He was right behind Keefe on the list of tenure, which is, tells you everything you need to know, right?
But but coaches, it's funny you say that. Coaches are the victims of their own success and their own failures. And the best example of that, Joe, is the guy that you cover every day, who has taken 6 teams now to the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is a record. But Peter Laviolette is one of those guys that says, well, you know what? We'll bring him in for 3 years. We'll quick fix it. We'll turn the franchise around. We'll win the Stanley Cup, or we'll go far in the playoffs, and then we'll get rid of him.
And we'll get rid of him. Yeah, well, and he's done that.
That's right, though. But that's become part of the culture now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, John. And I think the other thing that happens with these coaches, they suddenly get pigeonholed into, this is the type of coach they are, and does our franchise need that now? And so with Peter Laviolette, you go back over the history of what he's done. His early part of his contract, is in particular the first years, he's always had excellent first years wherever he's gone. Yeah. And so you look at the Ranger franchise, and now you're talking about Kreider 33, Zibanejad in his 30s, Panarin in his 30s. So what, not that many years ago was this rebuilding New York Rangers young team. Suddenly that window's closing a little bit because of that core group being in their 30s. So it seemed to make sense to bring Peter in, being a guy that has that, that first year, is when they really get going. And so that certainly lived up to its billing, and he's done a marvelous job in his first year here.
Is there somebody that jumps out at you for the Toronto job? And does the name Craig Berube make that much sense? Craig?
Yeah, and I like Craig. And I think that with Craig, I think he's better having some veteran players on his team And I think that's a relationship that
We're
thrives.
getting to
if
the
not-
point now in Toronto, Joe. Mitch Marner's not 22 anymore. Mitch
Right,
Marner's 27
right.
or 28. Austin
Right.
Matthews is going to be 27. I mean, this is stopping. This is now not as like the Rangers, but this is not a young team anymore here either.
Yeah, that's why I think Craig Berube would fit.